Well, good morning, everyone. Mr. President, distinguished ministers, global investors, friends, colleagues, good morning again. On behalf of all of our colleagues at BlackRock, welcome to the BlackRock GIP South Africa Infrastructure Investment Summit. We're very honored to have such an exceptional group of leaders in the room today, and we're delighted that you've taken the time to join us. We know you all have terribly busy schedules, and your presence here speaks volumes about the importance of the subject that brings us together, which is the future of infrastructure in South Africa and across the African continent. We're especially grateful to Mr. President for his leadership and partnership in convening this very important dialogue. At a time when South Africa, and indeed the African continent, stand at a pivotal moment in its development journey. Mr. President, your commitment to fostering collaboration between the private and public sectors and to creating an enabling environment for long-term investment has been instrumental. We deeply appreciate your vision for infrastructure as a catalyst for inclusive growth, economic resilience, and shared prosperity. The President and I were joking about the fact that BlackRock is the world's leading asset manager. And he said, when I told him we currently manage $14 trillion, he said we could be colonialists. Now that 14 million, $500 billion is in Rand in South Africa, and I've instructed KP and my colleagues that over the next 5 years, I expect that number to be doubled, at which point the President said, no, doubled is not enough, it has to be quadrupled. So KP, you have your marching orders. Now, none of that 14 trillion in assets is actually our own money. It's money that we manage on behalf of our clients. We think of them as units of trust, given to us by individuals as well as institutions to help them achieve their goals, long-term financial security, and in the case of the individuals, retirement with dignity. Now, investing in infrastructure is one way in which we can help them achieve these objectives. Infrastructure offers long-duration assets that sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, insurance companies, and other long-term investors desire. And when properly structured, it provides predictable cash flows, which are tied to the provision of essential services. At Global Infrastructure Partners, which I'm privileged to lead, which is now a part of BlackRock, what we do is invest in, own, and manage critical infrastructure assets in many countries around the globe. Our 46 airports currently serve 250 million passengers a year. We are one of the largest renewable energy companies in the world. We own the largest renewable energy business in Asia, the second largest business in Latin America, and soon one of the largest ones in North America. Our rail companies move passengers in Australia. We have a high-speed rail company that moves people in Italy. And Mr. President has told us that he wants a high-speed rail business in South Africa, so we should be exploring that opportunity together. Our focus as we manage all of these assets is on providing very high-quality services at reasonable rates. And we are very acutely aware of the special responsibility that we have as custodians of assets which are essential to the functioning of economies. We have seen firsthand the crucial role infrastructure investments can play in stimulating economic growth, enhancing national security, improving standards of living, and creating very well-paid jobs. This is because infrastructure sits at the intersection of growth, resilience, competitiveness, and security. It underpins how we manage natural resources, how we move people and goods, power industries, connect digitally, and support living standards. Nowhere is this more evident than in South Africa, where investments in energy reliability, in the modern logistic networks, water systems, digital connectivity, will be central to unlocking the country's full economic potential. We're privileged to be joined in this room by many leaders across both public, private, and civic sectors, domestic as well as international. All of you in this room have played and will continue to play important roles in defining how we will shape the future of infrastructure in South Africa. We believe you all share our conviction that infrastructure you build today will form the foundation for decades of growth and opportunity and competitiveness. The fact is the scale of the investment required is such that the traditional approach, which was basically rely on the public sector for funding, is just no longer viable, not just in South Africa, but in many countries around the globe. Most countries, whether in developed or emerging markets, are looking to attract private sources of capital to fund infrastructure. The good news is that private capital is eager to engage. But we must also remember that South Africa is in competition. It's competing with the US, with Germany, GCC countries, Asian and Latin American countries. And so we have to present a compelling case for investing in South Africa. The country is really at the very early stages of creating the types of public-private partnerships that we've seen in other countries and opening pathways for capital participation. What we see so far is very encouraging, and sustaining that momentum, which is clearly what the president and his administration want to do, requires clear regulatory frameworks, transparent procurement, consistent policy direction, and as the president is fond of saying, the rule of law. The roads, airports, ports, railways, power plants are not just physical assets. They are the backbone of economic inclusion and regional integration. So what is the core issue that's before us today? Simply put, we think that infrastructure in South Africa and indeed on the African continent as a whole is at an inflection point. Our discussions today are occurring at the time of both urgency as well as opportunity. The simple fact is that South Africa, like many other countries, has underinvested in infrastructure that underpins its strength and vitality. In the US, there is a company called the Association of Civil Engineers. And every 2 years, they issue a report card on the state of infrastructure in the US. The most recent one came out in 2025. And the grades that they assigned were both mostly C's and D's. Now, I don't know about you, but we have two sons. If they had shown up when they were in school with C's and D grades, we would have taken away their phones, made them study more, and probably grounded them. So I think the US, I use the US as an example to show that South Africa is not alone. But you look at the shortfalls that we've seen in electricity generation from Eskom. In the 21st century, there simply is no excuse for unreliable electricity supply. Reliable and affordable energy is a foundation requirement for growth. Strengthening the transmission and distribution networks, which I know the president is very focused on, and accelerating the growth of renewable energy will allow us to make progress in this regard. And of course, improving the efficiency of the airports, ports, and rail systems can unlock trade, reduce costs, and enhance South Africa's position as a gateway for the continent. Digital infrastructure, from broadbands to data centers, will also be a very key driver in innovation, entrepreneurship, and inclusion, particularly for the younger generation. One other issue that is important, which we must address if we are going to be successful in building the infrastructure for South Africa for the 21st century, is that just as important as it is to invest in physical assets, we must also invest in people. Infrastructure assets cannot be designed, built, or maintained without human capital. As South Africa expands its infrastructure footprint across energy, transport, water, digital systems, it will need a skilled workforce capable of delivering and sustaining those projects. The president talks a lot about the need for more engineering talent in South Africa, which I think is true. And so I think this presents a very significant opportunity for development, for it can be a very powerful engine for job creation, skills development, and economic inclusion. By investing in training and technical education, South Africa can build a workforce that not only supports infrastructure growth, but also benefits directly from it. Preparing this workforce is not simply an economic imperative. I think it is also a societal imperative. Governments, companies, labor organizations, and educational institutions must work together to ensure that the benefits of infrastructure investment are very well shared and shared broadly. It's impossible to talk about infrastructure today without talking about artificial intelligence. This is a technology that I think will transform all manner of human endeavors in ways that we can only begin to imagine. It promises immense gains in productivity and economic growth, advances in science, healthcare, disease treatment, to name a few areas. But it also poses very important challenges, some of which we don't yet know. Importantly, AI itself will require robust infrastructure, from data centers to energy capacity, further reinforcing the need to get infrastructure right. This summit is about partnership. It's about bringing us together to have candid, solutions-oriented discussions about what it will take to build and maintain the next generation of infrastructure in South Africa. It is where innovation will meet stewardship and where leadership makes a difference. Where priorities are clear, frameworks are stable, partnerships are strong, capital will flow, innovation will accelerate, and progress follows. We've certainly seen this dynamic at work in many countries, and we believe that South Africa has the potential to do the same, leveraging its institutional strengths, the breadth and depth of its financial markets, as well as its strategic position to build infrastructure that drives long-term economic growth and regional leadership. Our sincere hope is that our discussions today will help in some very small way to move forward along this journey. Thank you very much.
Bayo, thank you so much for those opening remarks. I believe we did a fabulous job there of instructing what the infrastructure opportunity is, both at the local as well as at the global level, and also the challenges that we all have to face in order to overcome the opportunity that is infrastructure. And from an opportunity standpoint, I think I've been already tasked with a 4X delivery. I sent an email to my team of 15, and I think they've all accepted. 133 billion per head will be focused on deploying assets into South Africa. But in order for us to understand where that opportunity sits, allow me to introduce His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, to come and address what the agenda is from a South Africa standpoint. But introducing him will be the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. Thank you.
Program Director, I thought I traveled all the way and then I will not do the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity. The Chairman and CEO of Global Infrastructure Partners, Mr. Adiebo Ogunwusi, my colleagues, Minister of Transport, Minister Barbara Creasy, and Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson, Deputy Ministers, Dr. David Masondo of Finance, and Mr. Zuko Godlimbi of Trade, Industry and Competition. Distinguished guests, it's not an easy job to introduce a president, but let me try. Infrastructure is a catalyst for economic growth and drives inclusive development as it enables access to markets, essential services, and economic opportunities. Mr. President, you once said, by prioritizing infrastructure development, we are laying the ground for long-term economic resilience. And this, you said, in 2021 when you were speaking at the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium. You committed government to ramping up spending on the development of infrastructure as a flywheel for South Africa's economic recovery. And you committed that, outlined that government plans to provide a third of the required capital for government infrastructure plans. And the Minister of Finance in the 2026 budget allocated R1 trillion for the infrastructure development over the medium-term expenditure period. Mr. President, in 2021, you acknowledged that even if government spends all it can on infrastructure development, the backlog remains so immense that it will take billions of rands and decades more to fill it without the contribution of or from private sector. The then head of investment and infrastructure in South Africa in the presidency, Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who's now Minister of Electricity and Energy, estimated that it will take 68 years to clear the school infrastructure backlog without private sector participation. Therefore, private sector funding is a component that is too critical for South Africa's infrastructure development trajectory. And because you were looking for private sector funders, how best to fund and to partner with a $14 trillion company to become our other people's money. And with that, I'd like to invite you to use their money effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Thank you. Program Director and ministers and deputy ministers who are here present, and the Chairman and CEO of Global Infrastructure Partners, my brother, Adebayo Ongulesi, who I sat with a few minutes ago, and we did a number of deals already, and I realized that I'm still in the wrong job. It's a real joy to have you all here, and I also extend my greetings to all other leaders who are here, investors and leaders of various corporations, for instance, such as the Public Investment Corporation, the DBSA, and all other partners from various countries that are here. We are truly honored to have you here, and business leaders who are here as well. I advisedly said to my brother that with a 14 trillion, not million, you've got to jump millions and trillion and billions and trillions. It's almost like the colonial company, the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch East India Company in today's money would be worth about 8 trillion rand. So you can already see the power that it had. But it had colonial power, and it had royal authority, and it had authority to run countries, and it had authority to enslave people and all that. So we honor you that you are not like the Dutch East India Company. Allow me to begin by thanking the Global Infrastructure Partners and BlackRock for convening this summit. I interacted with them and other investors last night, and I found that session to be most informative and uplifting. This gathering affirms Africa's place as a leading destination for global infrastructure investment. The global investment landscape is rapidly evolving, and I guess many of us can see it. It has become increasingly competitive, especially for emerging markets that are vying for capital around the world. Investors are seeking opportunities that are offering scale and sustainable returns in investment destinations where there is policy certainty, stable institutions, but more importantly, where there is manageable risk. Infrastructure development in Africa represents one of the largest, in my view, untapped investment opportunities of our time. According to the OECD, raising Africa's annual infrastructure investment to roughly $155 billion could nearly double continental GDP by 2040. Now, that is a really big ambition. It is significant that BlackRock, one of the world's largest infrastructure investment platforms, recognizes this immense potential. We welcome the announcement by BlackRock earlier this year of a $500 million commitment towards the African Infrastructure Fund 3, with investments that are targeted towards energy systems, logistics corridors, and transport and infrastructure. Earlier we were talking with my brother Adebayo about how they are into nearly everything. They're running airports, they're doing many other things. And I've got my Minister of Transport not far away from you, who is responsible for our airports. So have coffee with her before you leave. Private capital and expertise is critical to Africa's infrastructure progress. This is a given. If you go to any capital on the continent, you will hear them talk about infrastructure, 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 because it is the building block of every modern economy on earth and on our continent, as infrastructure is the next great frontier of investment. It is in this context that institutional investors are increasingly looking to Africa, but also especially to our own country at the southern tip of the continent, as a strategic long-term investment destination. I would say that whilst I wear my African hat, I also wear a very shining South African hat. Now, South Africa has the largest, most industrialized, and most diverse economy on the African continent, and that is recognized by all. We have a sophisticated financial sector, we have deep capital markets, substantial mining experience and reserves. If you look at the number of mines on our continent, you will always find South Africans doing the work, doing the engineering work, the technical work. We have vast tracts of arable land, untapped wind and solar energy resources, and cutting-edge digital infrastructure. And we've got the likes of Amazon, Google, all coming here to this very town and in Johannesburg, setting up their data centers, bolstering up the capability of our digital infrastructure. NVIDIA also beginning to make an entry into this market. So we have all those capabilities. We have a young, dynamic, and growing population with one of the highest rates of urbanization on the continent. The young population, which was held back by apartheid education, has sought to break through that glass ceiling that was set up by apartheid. They are breaking that ceiling, they are reaching to the top, they are acquiring skills, and they are becoming quite dazzling. 63% of South Africans, close on to 69%, live in urban areas where the demand for public infrastructure continues to rise. Many Black South Africans who were prevented from being part of the middle class have also broken through that glass ceiling. They would sit back and look at all the white people having a good life, and they were held back. They have broken that ceiling. They are now part of the middle class. They live in suburbs. Many of our people still live in horrible conditions, but they too will be brought up because we don't want to leave anyone behind. South Africa is a democracy in which the Constitution provides legal certainty. It protects the rights of everyone, it holds the state accountable, and even holds the president, the very one who's talking now, accountable. This is essential to both social justice and economic development. This is something that we are truly proud of. If there's anything that we have done after the dawn of democracy, it is this, that the people of South Africa have rights, and they can exercise their rights, and they can go to any court and go and complain about anything, take the government to court and hope to win, and quite often they win. The South African economy has weathered difficult times. Growth has been constrained by a number of factors, including when we went through almost 9 years of state capture, when we went through an energy crisis, which many of you will know about, when we went through COVID-19, which the whole world went through, and when we went through global economic volatility. Over the last 8 years, we have worked to survive and to revive our network industries and restore financial and institutional stability. We are now seeing signs of recovery. We have recorded 4 consecutive quarters of growth in early 2026. Although we are yet to see this translate into meaningful rise in employment and meaningful positive growth. Inflation is stable. Our sovereign rating has been upgraded. And last year, we were removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, which was a great boost for us in a country. South Africa's fiscal position is improving. We are on track to record our 3rd consecutive primary budget surplus, and we are steadily stabilizing our sovereign debt burden and have a clear path towards achieving sustainable levels of debt. We are now focused on improving the efficiency of public spending, freeing up resources for big-ticket infrastructure projects where we will be able to partner entities like BlackRock, where we will want them to bring most of the money, 99%, and we bring in 1%. How do you like that? The government has aligned with the South African Reserve Bank on the need to contain inflation, particularly in the context of heightened pressures from the Middle East conflict at the moment. This is necessary to protect South Africans from rising costs and to encourage investment. Truth be told, we are firmly committed to sustaining a stable macroeconomic framework, understanding that it is essential for faster inclusive growth and job creation. Job creation is our principal challenge, as many South Africans are currently unemployed. So we focus on how we can create more jobs for South Africans. So infrastructure, therefore, becomes an important ingredient or enabler in that regard. And it is the flywheel as I've often said, of generating more growth into the economy. Our structural reform agenda continues to gain momentum. It has brought about a new era of promise and confidence, I might add. It has positioned our economy as one of the leading destinations for investment in emerging markets. In the first 5 years of our investment drive, which we launched in 2018, we attracted 1.5 trillion rand in investment commitments in sectors such as energy, telecoms, infrastructure, property, mining, advanced manufacturing, and others. Just over a month ago, we held our 6th South Africa Investment Conference, where we secured a record $54 billion in pledges. Now, these pledges do, to a large extent, turn into real money being planted into the economy. There are pledges that are often approved in the investment committees of the companies, and if there's any delay, it is a delay of either permits or infrastructure being put in place and all that. So by and large, many of them are finally invested. This has encouraged us to set a new investment goal of $180 billion over the next 5 years. Now, these commitments represent factories being built, renewable energy projects being connected to the grid. As you well know, with the reform of our energy architecture, where we've separated generation, transmission, and distribution, we now have to extend the grid and add 14,000 kilometers. Now, in the past, Eskom would have wanted to do it alone and on debt. And we're now saying we want the private sector to be part of this whole process of expanding our electricity grid. The grid logistics corridors being modernized, the jobs being created, and the confidence being restored is at the center of what we are seeking to achieve. Our investment strategy is focused on sectors that will drive growth and create jobs at scale. These include in sectors such as manufacturing, mining, beneficiation of our minerals, the digital economy, agriculture, and the green economy as well. As an important part of our investment drive last week, government, industry, and capital markets players demonstrated their commitment to cooperation on critical minerals. And on critical minerals, I should say that, and I said it last night, I should say that South Africa, as possibly the smallest member of the G20, was able to move all those countries that control almost 75% of the world GDP to adopt a policy on critical minerals, which means that when minerals are being extracted, they should not just be carted as rock, dust, and soil to other locales. They should be extracted and processed at the source where they are found, and they should then leave as near-finished products. That policy was accepted, it was embraced, and South Africa was really pleased. But sometimes when you get too pleased, you're punished. And we were then punished by being told that, no, you've done too well. You got A1, you can't attend to the next one. So we're not going to Washington, we will go to the next few others, hoping that we will not be punished again. Maybe our voices are too loud. We want to move speedily from the commitment to identify commodities and their value chains to specific investable projects that deliver jobs to our people and value for our global partners. We are determined as a country that our mineral endowment should be translated into activities that benefit communities and generate growth. But we also want mutual benefit in this regard. Our investment ambition is high, very, very high indeed. We want to double fixed investment, which is currently at 15%, for a sustained period of time. We want to ramp it up to 20% and more. To do this, we need to reduce the gap between improved investor sentiment and far greater capital deployment that translates to strong growth and for more jobs. That is why this summit is so important. And once again, I'd like to thank BlackRock for agreeing to hold this summit here in South Africa. We want to leverage renewed investor interest to unlock an unprecedented decade of South Africa infrastructure development and industrial expansion. Over the next 3 years, South Africa will be spending over $60 billion, 1 trillion rand, on infrastructure across the 3 spheres of government, public entities as well as state-owned enterprises. But we want to see the private sector coming in to add their own muscle so that we ramp this number up. This will entail the modernization of our ports, the expansion of freight rail capacity, road rehabilitation, and strategic trade corridors. Now, I've had this dream, and my brother Adebayo tells me that BlackRock has financed speed trains in other locales in the world. And I said, oh, that is good news, because I have 2 speed trains to build. I have 2 speed trains, and that's why Minister says 3. So we've got 3 speed trains to build. Now, Minister, we can't go wrong. Here is someone, $14 trillion. And whatever your speed trains will cost, it will not swallow all that $14 trillion. So I want you to have coffee with the chairman of BlackRock Global Infrastructure. We are opening the rail network to greater private sector participation and rebuilding operational capacity through Transnet and the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, which is the responsibility of Minister Barbara Creecy. Through strategic private partnerships, we are improving port efficiency and reducing congestion, expanding freight capacity, and shifting freight from road to rail to reduce costs and emissions. Frankly speaking, South Africa is on steroids now. We are riding high. We have realized the debilitating period of the past, and we are shedding all that, and we know where we are going. We want to build a modern economy capability, and having people like yourselves who are well steeped in investing in infrastructure gives us a great deal of joy. Now, these reforms that we have embarked upon are restoring South Africa's logistics, competitiveness, and strengthening our role as a regional and continental trade hub. The infrastructure investment will also expand electricity generation capacity, but it will also strengthen transmission networks and also accelerate the transmission to a more competitive and sustainable energy market. Over the past 2 years, we have implemented far-reaching reforms that are reshaping our electricity system. A debilitating energy crisis that we've had in the past is largely behind us. And there were times when I kept comforting myself as we were going through this horrible period. And I kept saying silently, I think I know that California also had something like this. So this was like to calm me down. And when Spain had their own problems, I said, there you are. They're also having their own problems. But then again, we had to deal with our own problems. We've been able to improve the performance of our coal-fired power plants, to expand private generation capacity, and to stabilize the system. We are in the process of restructuring the national power utility ESCOM to create a more competitive electricity market. At the same time, we are expanding transmission infrastructure and also accelerating renewable energy deployment and scaling battery storage systems and advancing gas-to-power solutions. In the end, we are really positioning South Africa as a leader in green hydrogen and industrial decarbonization. Through the infrastructure fund that we set up, government has committed $6 billion in fiscal support over 10 years to crowd in the private sector. And, you know, Minister Creasy and Chaveni, this private sector does not need to be crowded in. They're just there. They're just walking in. They just want to walk in. So we should welcome that because they are the ones who are coming up with fascinating and innovative instruments to fund infrastructure, blended finance, the listing of infrastructure bonds, and all that. Now, these investments will fundamentally reposition South Africa as a competitive market, and it will have a destination of being able to be supportive to our other neighbors in the region. They will transform the productive capacity of our economy over the next decade. So this summit is where the interests of the private sector as well as the interests of the state converge. Investors seek certainty, they seek transparency and efficiency. We are therefore building a capable and a credible pipeline of bankable projects designed to attract both domestic as well as international capital and investment. Our own organization, Invest SA, has curated an investment book of 85 projects that are valued at $73 billion. Our goal is to mobilize public-private partnerships to deliver these projects, recognizing that the scale of our ambition in the end requires the full participation of the private sector, development finance institutions, and institutional investors. In support of these objectives, we have been forging ahead with what I would call an ambitious structural reform agenda through the project means to open the way. Now, the first phase of this project focus on energy, transportation, and water and telecommunications. The second phase, which we launched recently, is focusing on reforms in local government, in digital transformation, and human settlements. Now, through these projects, we have reduced regulatory requirements and bottlenecks, and we've expanded private sector participation and also have improved efficiency of our infrastructure pipeline and strengthened public partnership collaboration. Now, you are in a country where we have modeled and practiced how the cooperation between government and the private sector should work. So you are not in a place where we're going to fumble, fiddle around, we have perfected this. So when you come in as an investor, there's a way in which we operate which is well chiseled and which runs well. We are reforming our immigration system to ensure South Africa remains competitive in the global race for skills, for innovation, and for investment. These reforms have included increasing the trusted employer scheme, which is based on a points system for skilled migration, remote work, and startup visas. Investors entering South Africa need assurance that their investments are safe, but they also need assurance that the business's operating environment is underpinned by the rule of law. Now, one of our key priorities is therefore to combat infrastructure-related crime, construction site extortions, and illegal mining. We are deploying multidisciplinary teams to dismantle organized crime networks and root out all misdemeanors in this sector. At the same time, we continue to build institutions and to rebuild those that were weakened during the period of state capture. Corruption, accused are being prosecuted. Stolen assets are being recovered. And the capacity for sophisticated investigation is being strengthened. Now, a structural shift is underway towards a more efficient, competitive, and investment-friendly economy. As it is with any other country, there will always be regulatory bottlenecks and challenges. We are removing them and melting them away and working with the private sector as they raise some of these issues, we immediately address them. Our objective in the end is to translate reform momentum into greater investment, into faster growth, and into more job creation. We remain committed to macroeconomic stability, to fiscal discipline, and to forging ahead with the structural reform agenda that is firmly embedded within the state. And some people often ask, is this sustainable? Will this go on into the future? My answer is yes. It has now dug its roots into South African psyche, a way of doing things. We will continue with all these reforms, regardless of who in the end continues to lead this country. We invite you, therefore, to be partners in shaping our country's future. South Africa has a great future. We are not merely building infrastructure. We are building a new growth path for this great country, one that is defined by resilience, competitiveness, and shared prosperity. And I do believe that together we can convert the ambition that we have into action, and action into lasting impact. And seeing who you are here, you are people who believe in impact, you are serious people, you work with money, and people who work with money are generally very serious. They hardly ever smile. And when they smile, it means that they are happy with what they have had. So thank you very much.